Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm so excited for because today we're going to be chatting through the top books I hope to read this fall. Now, it's no secret on my channel that the fall season is quite literally my favorite. I love the vibes, I love the energy, and I especially love reading spooky and ambiance-filled books to sort of match the energy of the world around me. So the first three books that are on my TBR are actually books I selected for my seasonal cozy book club. That's right, I'm so excited to announce that I am launching a book club, and I'm going to be actually running this book club over on Fable, who I am partnering up for this video, but the actual book club itself is not sponsored. I love seasonal reads, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to read books alongside you guys where we can discuss, share our thoughts and feelings, especially for some of these very anticipated fall releases that I cannot wait to read. The book club itself is geared for fall, and I will be running it every single fall, but depending on interest and participation, I could definitely make this a year-long seasonal book club too. As I mentioned, this book club will be over on the Fable app, which, if you're not familiar, is an amazing app designed for readers that's completely free. On the Fable app, I will have my own book club page, which I will have linked down below for you to join. When you join, you'll be able to see the monthly selection for that month. There will also be breakout rooms for every single chapter where people can discuss their thoughts and feelings as we read along, and you can even get like ebooks within the app. You can annotate together as a group, which is so cool. But again, if you prefer to read physical, audio, ebook from the library, fear not, all of those annotations within those ebooks will be automatically added to the chapter rooms, so you will not miss out on any type of discussion, which is great because, again, it's free. And then at the end of the month, we can also all share our star ratings. We can see our average thoughts and feelings and consolidated reviews, which is also so much fun. For now, I went ahead and selected the 3 books for the launch of the fall portion of this, but we can definitely think about doing polls in the future where we can all vote on what we want to read the most as a group. So those are the nuts and bolts of the book club itself. If you guys are interested in joining and reading along with me this season and maybe future seasons as well, I will have a link down below to the page for you to join up. But let's go ahead and chat through my fall TBR, starting with the 3 books I plan to read for the book club itself, which I'm so excited about. So the first book on my fall TBR, and the first book I selected for my book club for the September slot, is A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Fisher. This is by far one of my most anticipated releases. I love this author. I love her dark lyrical writing style, and I also really appreciate how she often uses like fairy tales as a part of her inspiration. And A Sorceress Comes to Call is a book inspired by one of the Grimm brothers fairy tales, Goose Girl in particular. We follow our main character who knows that her mother is not normal. She knows it's not normal to not be able to leave her house. She knows it's not normal to have a house that has no doors on the inside for privacy. Her only moment of freedom is when she has an opportunity to ride her horse out into the wilderness. And she also knows it's not normal when her mother makes them flee in the middle of the night to travel to a faraway keep because her mother has hatched a plan to basically manipulate those who live there. This is a story, though, that I believe is multi-perspective. We follow, again, not only the daughter of this woman, but also another young woman who lives in the keep in which they arrived at. I feel like this is going to be mesmerizing, dark. So excited to read this, and I'm so excited to read this book with you guys. Next book, which is my October selection, is a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of horror, and is also a release by one of my personal favorite, like, creepy good time authors, and that is An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. This is Alexis Henderson's like dark academia horror fantasy sort of mashup, and honestly, all of the inputs just sound amazing. And this follows our main character, Lennon Carter, and her life is falling apart. So when she receives an invitation to attend this very prestigious, very secret magical school, she decides to take them up on their offer. She also knows why she's received this invitation, and that is she has the innate ability in persuasion, meaning she can manipulate and control other people. After arriving at this magical school, Lennon becomes a little concerned with herself, with how much she's loving her lessons and how interested she is in her own pursuit of power, and things get especially complicated when she gets wrapped up with another dark figure on campus named Dante. I think this is going to be such a vibey read. Dark academia, dark magic, and a woman's pursuit for endless power. I mean, I'm so curious about this one, and I already know I love Alexis Henderson's writing so much. And then the last book I selected for the book club, which will be the November read, is A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. This is a sapphic romance, dark, academic rivals to lovers sort of situation that also centers fae and folklore. I mean, again, all of those things together really call out to me. And this centers our main character, Lorelai, who is a folklorist. She also has a quick temper and an even quicker wit. And at the beginning of the story, she's currently traveling through the wilderness with her beloved academic mentor because they're trying to find this lost fae spring that's supposed to give like untold powers to those who are able to discover it. However, though, a series of events occurs resulting in in the tragic passing of her mentor, and everything sort of turned upside down. And now our main character must work alongside her academic rival to try to not only find this spring, but to also unlock like even larger secrets, folklore, fae, fantasy, academic rivals, vibey setting. I already know I love Alison Staff's writing style. I feel like this is going to be so good. Let's go ahead and dive into all of the other books I also hope to read this fall, because as I've mentioned, there are so many of them. First and foremost, I have The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. This is Lev Grossman's like newest release, and honestly, ever since it arrived on like my doorstep, I've been wanting to pick it up. I love King Arthur core story, and this one also appears to have a very interesting twist on the classical narrative that I feel like is going to really draw me in. And this follows our main character Colum, and he is a gifted young knight who's just arrived in Camelot to compete for a position on King Arthur's round table. But he has arrived too late, because 2 weeks prior to the start of this novel, there was a big battle resulting in the death of King Arthur and also the disbandment of most members of this round table. Now Callum finds himself in this place, in this city, surrounded by basically like the cast-offs of the round table, and it sort of becomes up to them to help rebuild and restore balance to this place and the world in general. I feel like this story is going to center like unlikely heroes, maybe some found family, possibly some humor. I already know Lev Grossman's writing is really lyrical and beautiful, which I feel like is going to match the sort of classical setting of this story. Again, I love any type of reinterpretation or slight shift in a classic tale and story, so I feel like this is going to be so vibey. The next book that's on my fall TBR is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This is my second Alexis Henderson on my fall TBR. A book I've had on my shelf now for a little while, but just one I only save for the fall season. This is a gothic horror story centering our main character Marion, and Marion has struggled to survive day in and day out, and she dreams of being able to flee the city and basically make a new life for herself, but she knows she doesn't really have any options or opportunities to make this happen until she sees a peculiar job listing in the newspaper one day, in which people are looking to hire something called a blood maid. And she decides to take this unusual form of employment on, which opens her up to like the higher levels and echelons of society, but obviously it's very much giving vampire. I really enjoy The Year of the Witching by the same author. I feel like this is going to be creepy and dark, but I also feel like it's going to center a main character that I adore and will be able to root for. I'm so looking forward to reading this. I've been craving vampire books, so I think this is going to absolutely fit the bill. The next book that's on my TBR is How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. This is a cozy murder mystery story. I know the idea of a cozy murder mystery story seemingly makes no sense, because how can that be cozy? But I promise you, it just works in the best ways. In 1965, a teenage Frances Adams is at a small country fair with her two best friends when she gets her fortune read and is told the bone-chilling news that one day she is going to be murdered. From that day onward, Frances began to obsessively keep track of everyone she meets, take notes on everyone, and basically just tried to speculate who could possibly want her dead at some point in her life. Everyone around her thinks she's a little wacky, that this is an unusual pursuit and nothing bad is going to happen, until it does nearly 60 years later when Frances is murdered. Fast forward to present day, we're following our main character, who is summoned to the country estate of her reclusive rich aunt, and she decides to sort of take it upon herself to try to solve what in the world happened. I love the concept of this book. I love manor-based murder mystery stories. I love a whodunit. I want to know what in the world happened, and I hope that this balance is sort of a creepy, cozy good time, you know? Another book I definitely hope to get to this season is The Cage of Dark Hours by Marina Lostetter. This is the second book to The Helm of Midnight, which was so good. A book I read a few years ago now, but it's the perfect balance between like murder, mystery, thriller, and fantasy, a combination of genres that I personally really enjoy. This is set in a fantasy world where magical objects exist. Basically, you can put these things called death masks on, which allows you to access knowledge, information, and perspectives from someone who has passed on because they've imbued their knowledge within this particular item themselves. We follow our main character, who's actually a regulator, and her job is to basically keep track of and protect dangerous magical objects from getting out into the public. However, though, something happens at the beginning of book 1 where a death mask of a famous serial killer is stolen and his killings begin to haunt the streets once again. This series is dark and intense, full of twists and turns, obviously quite eerie given the subject matter, and I think the fantastical twist with the magic system is also super clever, so I want to read book 2 this season, definitely. The next book that's on my TBR is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I'm so looking forward to picking this book up. In fact, I feel like this is going to be one of my earlier fall reads. This is a contemporary fantasy story that a lot of people compare to like The Shadow of the Wind or The Night Circus, two books that I've personally enjoyed immensely, and also has to do with like a dangerous magical book and a lot of people seeking out our main character after she acquires this book in her life. And apparently this is a rather dark novel, like apparently much darker than people were anticipating when they initially picked it up, which definitely made this book call out to me a lot more than it initially did upon release. But this follows our main character who lived a very ordinary life. She worked as a bookseller in New York City, but one day everything changes when one of her favorite customers actually passes away, and then he leaves her this very mysterious book, which actually allows her to like travel through any door to anywhere. This sort of sparks a group of people who are desperately trying to find this book and therefore trying to find our main character, puts her in a lot of danger. It sounds intense and I'm really looking forward to it. Apparently it's like a really good mix of horror, vibes, fantasy, plus it has books. Need I say more? Another book that I did not get to last season that I definitely want to read this time around is Wayward by Amelia Hart. This is a witch-centered story following different women who are thought to be or have magical powers throughout time. Our first main character lives in 2019, and at the beginning of the story, she has fled to the cottage that she inherited from her great-great-grandmother that she hasn't been to in many, many years. She flees here, though, to escape her abusive partner. We follow another character in 1619 who is on trial for being a witch after a local farmer dies and the town blames her. And we also follow a woman in 1942 during the World War who has been trapped in her family's crumbling estate, who dreams of being able to pursue a more robust education the same as her brother, but is instead straitjacketed by social conventions. And again, I believe all of these stories begin to intertwine in a very intense and emotional way. I also hear the writing style of this is fantastic, and I do also believe that this has some sort of magical element to it as well. Another book I hope to get to is The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. This is the third and final book to the School of Man series. I read the first two books last fall and loved them. I do not know why I didn't complete the trilogy then, but I'm also happy that I have this on my TBR for this fall because I love this fantasy trilogy so much, and it's also perfect for the fall season. It's dark academia, it's found family, it's dark and intense but full of humor, characters to root for. It's so creative as well. I just adore these books. But in this series, we're introduced to our main character who is a self-appointed loner. She has entered the School of Magic. She's trying to keep her head down. She's trying to keep her magic studies up so she can survive and graduate this incredibly dangerous school. In this world, basically magic users are constantly hunted by monsters, and magic users are actually at the most vulnerable when they're children. As a solution to this, they basically send all their kids to the school so they can learn how to use their magic better to protect themselves. And it's kind of in this like other realm or reality. And while technically the school is less dangerous than just existing out in the world as an untrained magic user, it's still incredibly deadly on a daily basis. So students are forced to make alliances and just have to be really careful in their day-to-day life. Enter in our main character, who is very gifted from a magical point of view, but also most of her magical training is trying to make her be like an evil sorceress. This is a book about our main character basically begrudgingly making friends, taking on power structures, and just like trying to survive this school setting. It's such a great blend of things. I found it to be so delightful, and I can't wait to read the third and final book. Again, a perfect fall read if you haven't checked this out. The next book on my fall TBR is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I honestly cannot believe I haven't read this book yet. This is a dark academia story that's so popular, a very viral fall read, and I'm looking forward to finally getting to it myself. I picked it up a few months ago knowing I wanted to read it in the fall season. But this follows our main character on the eve of her leaving prison, because a decade prior to the start of this novel, her and 7 friends were basically part of this like reclusive Shakespearean group, and they were training for these parts, all of these things, and then something happened in their final year together when everything turned ugly, and I think like all mayhem sort of broke out from there. I love mysterious and sort of winding tales and stories. I also feel like this book is going to be full of unlikable characters and a central mystery that I feel like will be really fun to unpack. Obviously, this is a really loved book, so I'm excited to check it out for myself and see if it's worth the hype. Another book that I feel like is perfect for fall, and that is Our Fresh Air of the Night by Marina Enriquez. This is a translated work, and it's a work of horror that I've heard such good things about. Like, people say this is very creepy. So we will see if I'm going to be able to stomach it, if I'll be able to sleep, but there's only one way to find out. This is also a story that centers cults specifically, which very much calls out to me. But this is a story that opens on a road trip that a father and son are taking together as a way to grieve the recent passing of their mother/wife. They're going to this woman's ancestral home to sort of introduce the son to aspects of their mother's history as a way to bond and to grieve together. When they get there, they realize the dark legacy that this woman left behind because her ancestral home is home to a cult that is pursuing eternal life, and they do a lot of creepy and weird things to try to accomplish this, and they're very interested in the son. They flee, or they try to flee. This cult is now super interested in them. I feel like this is going to be creepy and dark and vibey, beloved already. I've already heard such excellent things about this. I just feel like the perfect book to read during the fall season. You know what I mean? The next book that's on my fall TBR is Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments. This is the second book to the Edinburgh Night series, the first one being The Library of the Dead. And this is such a fun, engaging, and spooky read that I always like to read during the fall season. This is a fantasy series that's set in a world that's very similar to ours, but there are a few key differences. First and foremost, it is a darker, more intense, more dangerous world, and also supernatural beings do exist. From ghosts to seeing the future, these types of things, and supernatural professions also exist within this world. We follow our main character Ropa, who does have the ability to talk to ghosts, and she makes a living by basically like passing on the final rites between ghosts and their loved ones. She is a 14-year-old girl who is incredibly scrappy, very intense, and very focused on what she wants, and will basically take no crap from anyone. I love Ropa as a main character. At the beginning of book 1, she basically realizes that something strange is happening in town, where a bunch of children are coming back to their family as husks of their former selves, and Ropa sort of gets involved in trying to figure out what is going on. This series very much gives like spooky mystery of the week vibes, and in combination with the great Edinburgh setting, paranormal elements of the story, and just such a fantastic main character in Ropa, it's a blast to read, so I definitely want to get to book 2. Another book that's on my TBR is Where the Dark Stands Still. I've heard such good things about this book from you guys, and it's honestly launched itself up at the top of my TBR. It just feels like it's going to be vibey and lyrical in all of my favorite ways. And this is a story that follows our main character Liska. And Liska knows that any type of magic is monstrous, and anyone who uses magic is a monster. Given this, she is incredibly desperate at the beginning of the story to continue to be able to hide her magical abilities, but it's becoming harder and harder by the day. So she decides to risk venturing out into the magical woods to find one particular plant which will be able to help her get rid of her magic altogether. Instead, she runs into a very mysterious figure who just happens to be a demon, and they make a deal. Naturally, as you do. From there, we follow our main character as she's whisked away back to this demon's like crumbling manor within this forest. I love all of the vibes, all of the setup of this. This just sounds like everything I could possibly want in a vibey fall read. Yes, yes, yes. Wouldn't be a fall TBR if I didn't talk about magical libraries. So the next book on my TBR is The Book That Broke the World by Mark Lawrence. This, of course, is a sequel to The Book That Wouldn't Burn, and I would say this series has by far and away one of my favorite magical library settings. It's just so expansive. Just the scale and nature of this library is so all-consuming. The magical components of this are just amazing, and it definitely has like a dark and mysterious plot line at the core of it. This is a book that also centers two main characters, a girl and a boy whose lives and fates become intertwined. The first is a girl who grew up in an area called the Dust, which is really dangerous, and at the beginning of the story, her community is attacked, resulting in her having to flee to the central city and actually begin working at this library. We also follow a young man who's been trapped in a chamber of this magical library his entire life with his siblings. Things get wacky, things get weird, things get library-y, because the setting of the library is almost like a main character of the book itself, and it is amazing. I really enjoyed book 1, and I know book 2 is going to be a perfect read for the season, so I'm definitely continuing. Next up, we have more vampires on the TBR, as we need for this time of year, and that is Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. She also has another book coming out in August that I definitely want to read too, so consider that a part of my fall TBR as well. But this is her futuristic vampire story set in Mexico City. The first main character we follow is Domingo. He is a a lonely garbage collector living on the streets of Mexico City. Everything in his life, though, is turned upside down when a very powerful vampire, like, walks in his life. She is fleeing from others, completely unknown to him, but she also has, like, Aztec ancestry, and I think they sort of venture out into the world together. Mexico City, vampires, Silva Moreno Garcia. I mean, I already know this is going to be so good. And the last book that is on my fall TBR is How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying by Janglo Wexler. This book honestly just sounds super silly and playful in a way that I feel like could be a little bit of a palate cleanser between some of my more intense spooky reads this season. This is a book that basically takes the concept of, like, instead of being a hero of the story, what would happen if you actually turned into the villain? And we follow our main character who's kind of this, like, immortal being who constantly, like, wakes up, tries to be the hero, tries to rally the troops to, like, fight against this big dark power, and is constantly failing over and over and over and over and over again. And eventually they've just gotten tired. So they have decided to try something new, because if you can't beat him, join him. So now this sort of immortal main character is an evil person, and I think that's sort of where the story begins to unfurl. I feel like this is going to be funny and, like, very referential to the genre, which I feel like could be a blast. I just feel like I'm going to be able to read this book quickly, and I'm so excited for it. Alrighty guys, that is my fall TBR, the top books I hope to read this upcoming fall. There are definitely some new releases that I did not include that are also for sure going to make my TBR. Again, if you're interested in joining my cozy seasonal book club, I will have a link down below. I'm so excited for it to launch in September. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!